So I lived a great many years in the Italian city of Modena. 30 years I spent there. And I've never really considered the city in any depth. I was so immersed in Italy and the Italian culture. I only saw my immediate surroundings somehow and my new job as a translator. My mind was a bit distracted, perhaps. And I played in a band from the early years because I always liked to play the guitar. And because I am English, I was slightly in demand because the music that was listened to mainly, they listened to music sung in English. And the Italian singers would sing in English and they sounded a bit funny sometimes because they didn't have quite the right pronunciation of all of the words. So I was, I had almost an unfair advantage at first, I think. But I came to understand that, you know, you need to sing in Italy, in Italian when you're in Italy. That the bands, that the Italian music is a whole genre, a whole thing, and there's some great music made by Italian bands. So I was, importing a different culture, and we did some popular songs that are well known, and then I did songs or we did songs that were written by my friend in London, Steve Lake, who is actually a sort of professional musician, I guess, a minor rock star, but a very good songwriter indeed. He was the singer in the band Zounds, Zounds, or he is, I think Zounds is still extant or has been reformed. They're quite a sort of, I don't know whether you could call it a cult band, but it's in that sort of genre. A minor, you could say, but they were in the alternative punk scene, quite refined. So I did those songs for, with the other guys in the band. When I left, that's what we were doing, all of Steve's songs. And because they were good, we used to enjoy it. I used to enjoy it tremendously. I'm sorry that it ended. But my memories of Modena, my thoughts of Modena, they only really started to form, shall we say, after I left. And I used to return regularly to Italy to stay with my wife, to whom I'm still married, although we're separated. And so it has been for many years. But by the time I became a Christian, I did attend a couple of church services in the city, in two different churches. And one in particular, the second one that I attended, was very good, I thought. But the first one also, they were both good. And it's something that's put me in mind of my idea that churches do work in among the Gentiles, because I would view the Italians to be more of a Gentile nation. There are many Israelites in Italy, I believe, but of course they'll be mainly in the north of Italy, and the country is one, and is somewhat mixed, shall we say. It's a bit of a mixed multitude, and also there's Rome, and I don't fully understand the genealogy of the Roman people, whether it's different. I suspect it is. It somehow seems to be connected with the Normans. It's just, I should really research it a bit better. They seem to me to be a different people. But it's all mixed up, you see, in Italy. So it's like I would view it as a Gentile nation. Um, and that's why I think the churches that I attended, and I attended 5 altogether, were all good. I have some reservations about the first one because it was in Verona, which is quite a famous city. I think that's the problem. Verona is not Modena. Modena is, I've just heard it described as a fucina, like a forge, where many different ideas come together and have been forged together over the centuries. And I don't know why that is, but I do think there's some foundation to it. It's very close to Bologna, which is Italy's, I think, primary university or oldest university, and I think is older than the English universities. I'm not quite sure, but it's certainly very old, and perhaps only. I think the first university was also founded in Italy, but I can't recall where. Um, but that's where that tradition started. So I mean, that's a very important philosophical movement, I suppose. But then, in the early, the Protestant Reformation, is it called? I'm not sure. When we Bible believers and our ancestors started to become uncomfortable with the interference of Rome with our faith, with the interposition of a pope and rules and taxes also. I think we were quite right, certainly in this country, to be under the yoke of the Bishop of Rome seems to me to be very unjust. I think our King Henry VIII did us a great service, although it's in the hand of the Lord, of course, all these things. And Rome has crept back in everywhere now. Rome controls all the churches ultimately. It doesn't matter what it says on the door. It's very difficult to escape the dominion of Rome. Well, they do say all roads lead there. That's the trouble. But in Italy it was different, you see, because those people anyway, you have to remember that the people attending the Protestant churches would be breaking with society because it is a Catholic society, and Catholicism isn't just a religion. It's also tied up with the whole, or has been. I mean, I'm sure this is fading now, but when I was there, certainly tied up with the concepts of public order and decency and the state. The Catholic Church is powerful in Italy, and it's a superstitious people in some cases. Until they manage to force everybody into university, as they've been doing now for several decades. But for a long time, it was just a simple people, I would say, in many respects, not highly educated, you see, compared to the UK, where the education system probably was a bit earlier when they forced all that stuff upon us with their wretched schools and their canings and their punishments. Although the early schools, I'm sure, were much better than today's schools, but I never really took to the school myself. It wasn't a place I particularly wanted to go. I saw what they had on offer, and I saw that it involved just doing what other people said. And I'm happy to do what people want me to do, but I wouldn't necessarily offer myself up to that service if I can avoid it. I'm a bit of a selfish man, I suppose you could say. I like to please myself. I think a lot of men do. I don't see anything wrong with it. But the Protestant revolution, as it were, in Italy started, I think I'm right in saying that it started in Modena. And that's very significant. And I read records in one church that I'd attended where it said that several people were burned at the stake in Modena for refusing to, or for practicing Protestantism, which was, or at the time anyway, was certainly heretical. I suppose it still is, really. Or it would be if it were practiced properly. It's heretical, and there's stories of burning people at the stake for heretical teachings. I don't know how true they are, because it's all news. This is the problem. There are all these news stories and these very violent accounts of burnings of men. I'm skeptical of those old accounts. I really am. I don't know how barbaric we truly were or are, but I think a lot of the stories of our early barbarism are greatly exaggerated, or have been greatly exaggerated, to make us look to be demons in Satan's little season, so that we could be removed from our position of grace. But so that occurred in Modena. That movement had a centre in Modena. I'm sure it happened elsewhere, but apparently Modena was it was a focus. It was a focus of the whole Italian music scene, actually. It's where those fast Italian sports cars are made that everybody likes, me included, more or less. Ferraris are made just down the road, Lamborghinis again, and Maseratis are actually made, or used to be made, in the city. Bugatti. It really is. It's because it's an industrial centre and a centre of intellectual excellence, I suppose you could call it. Ultimately, because the presence of what's his name, Enzo Ferrari, and whatever Lamborghini's name was, I don't know. There was money to be made. These men were great entrepreneurs, and Modena became renowned as being a centre also of mechanical engineering genius. And that's why so much industry developed and spread in Italy, and as they began to sell to the rest of Europe. And I managed to get onto the crest of that wave purely by the hand of the Lord as a translator. And I was extremely in demand for many years, the services that I could provide. These things are over now. But for a long time it was pretty intense. So that's Modena. It's not one of the places in Italy that most people know, I suppose, because you'd have to say, well, it's. I always say it's near Bologna, but maybe people don't even know Bologna. Um, People know like Venice and Florence, I suppose, and Naples, and Modena is in the centre. It's the Italian equivalent of Birmingham, I think, in a way. Interestingly enough, um, it's in the centre. It's fairly northwards. The south of Italy. When I visited the south, I understood that I had, you know, moved into different territories. There's no comparison really, even though it's one country. They used to joke about erecting a wall um, around the height of Florence. I don't know whether they'd have it south or north of Florence. I think it depends on the particular prejudice. Possibly north, because Florence was a centre of power and authority in its own right in medieval times, I believe. More so, perhaps, than Modena became, I don't know. Very influential. But there is a different culture in the south of the country. And of course, as industry spread in the north and, you know, work was available, then many southern Italians moved to the north of Italy and to work in the factories because they live in, you could call it a depressed part of the world. An agricultural economy that functioned very well, but people wanted to buy sports cars and Alfa Romeos and to impress the girlfriend and improve their standard of living, I guess, and throw out the old cast iron stove and get a brand new electric one or gas one. And generally, we were persuaded, I suppose, to somewhat reduce the quality of our lives by lusting after material goods. But we were entrained within a process and within a mental programming also, because of course the cinema became so influential upon all of us. Very few people paused. I think it would have been hard because we didn't know about Edward Bernays at the time. We didn't understand how carefully these things are prepared. You have to look at them sideways. It was spellcraft. It is spellcraft. It continues to exert its power over many people, most people, I would say, the vast majority of people. But perhaps its grip is weakening. I would say so. So that's a move of God in Italy, and of course in Britain. We're seeing it. It's happening one step at a time, and all the knots are coming to the comb. These are very interesting times indeed. I hope I live to explore them. They're a bit exciting, they're not the calmest of times, perhaps. I would be more in favour of having a little cabin by a windy river, with a small community and a few wives and some cattle. I don't know about cattle. I don't know what to do with them. I don't know about wives, actually. I think one might be sufficient at this time in life. And a serving woman, I think that would be helpful. But I don't think that's going to happen next year. But who can say? the Lord can move very quickly, and the way that society has developed, I mean, to me, there's no way that um, people are going to that everybody will gradually understand, because there are so many people that will not look or cannot look. They've been blinded. They've blinded themselves. They're blinded by science. That was a song, wasn't it? Also, they do say blinded by the light, but I think they were blinded by a false light. God doesn't want us to be blind. We are encouraged to be um, to examine the world and to understand it and to develop wisdom. That's not blindness. We are thinking men and women, and we've been given this tremendous gift of reason and contemplation. But of course, many people think we're just sophisticated animals. God bless.